He was already sitting in my chair when I came back from the bathroom, legs crossed, glass of scotch in hand, laughing with the group like he'd been born there. My plate, half-finished steak and garlic mash, had been moved aside. Not cleared. Moved. Like I was the afterthought. Like I'd never been there at all. And my wife? She was standing next to him, arm around his shoulder, whispering something in his ear. Not the kind of whisper that says, "My husband's coming." The kind that says, "You're the only person who matters here." I stood at the edge of the patio, unsure whether to step forward or disappear. The music thumped from the rooftop speakers, some synth remix of an 80s song. The city skyline behind them glowed like it was mocking me. He raised his glass to me. Didn't stand. Just raised it. Like a toast. "Bathroom line must have been wild," he called out. I gave a polite laugh. Shaky. Awkward. My throat was tight. "No line at all," I said. "Just a long mirror." He laughed. She laughed. I didn't. I didn't sit back down. Just hovered. Someone made a joke about tech guys being afraid of confrontation. My wife laughed again, louder this time. I wasn't wearing the cologne she told me to. I'd picked something else. Something cheaper. Maybe she noticed. I excused myself before dessert. No one stopped me. Not even her. The Uber ride home was silent, except for the driver humming along to some indie pop song I didn't recognize. I stared out the window the whole time, watching neon signs blur past like they were trying to erase what had just happened. Avelyn sat beside me, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone with that half-smile she wore when she thought no one was watching. I wanted to ask what was so funny. I didn't. When we got home, she didn't even take off her heels. Just walked straight to the bedroom, still texting. I stood in the kitchen, loosening my tie with one hand and pouring whatever whiskey we had left with the other. I drank it without ice. It burned worse than I expected. I sat at the dining table for a long time, in the dark, watching the hallway glow under the bedroom door. Every now and then, a shadow moved across it. Her. Pacing. Or maybe just changing. She didn't call for me. Didn't ask if I was coming to bed. And I didn't go. I just sat there, thinking. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up there. On the chair. In the same suit, the collar damp from sweat or maybe drool, I couldn't tell. The clock read 4:03 a.m. The bedroom door was open now. I peeked in. She was asleep, curled around a pillow, not me. Her phone on the nightstand, screen glowing faintly. Notifications piling up. I should have left it alone. But I didn't. It was open. No password. She'd taken it off years ago because I always forgot it and had nothing to hide. Right. There were texts. Dozens. Most from Cashin. His name was saved as just C. Like she thought that made it subtle. As if I didn't know how her brain worked. As if I hadn't seen the way she looked at him while I stood holding a plastic plate of hors d'oeuvres, pretending to laugh at a joke I didn't hear. "You're not like him. Thank God." That was the first message I saw. Sent at 11:52 p.m. While I was probably still at the party, maybe even still there on the patio, watching her arm drape over his shoulder. He looked so out of place tonight. Felt bad for him, tbh. You carried the conversation. As always, smirking face. She hadn't responded. Not directly. But she'd sent a photo. A blurry selfie from the rooftop, the city behind her, her glass raised. She looked happy. And I hadn't seen that face in years. Not since we were in that tiny apartment in Montclair, eating takeout on the floor and laughing about nothing. That version of her didn't exist anymore. She'd been replaced by someone sleeker, sharper, more expensive, and I was still the guy who used duct tape to fix things instead of replacing them. I put the phone down. Quietly. No confrontation. No midnight fight. I just stood there for a moment, staring at her sleeping. She looked so peaceful, but my mind wasn't. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. I felt like a man watching someone else's movie, and I was the poorly written side character who wasn't even supposed to be in the final act. So I went into the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror, and said the dumbest thing I've probably ever said in my life. "You're gonna make her miss you." Even though I knew she didn't. Not anymore. The plan wasn't born out of revenge. At least not in the traditional sense. I wasn't plotting to catch them in the act or crash one of their lunch dates and scream like some tragic husband in a soap opera. No, it was smaller than that. More pathetic. I just wanted her to look at me again the way she used to. Not with pity, not with obligation, but with actual interest. Curiosity, even. I wanted to haunt her a little. Not as a ghost. As a regret. So I started with small things. I changed my routine. I stopped bringing her coffee in the morning like I usually did. Didn't ask how her meetings went. Didn't comment on her new perfume, even though I noticed. I didn't leave for groceries with my usual need anything, and when I came home, I didn't say where I'd been. She noticed. At first, barely. A blink. A hesitation. Then came the casual questions, tossed out like she was bored and not actually fishing for answers. "You're up early again," she said one Thursday, brushing her hair in front of the hallway mirror. "Yeah," I replied, buttoning a shirt I hadn't worn in months. "Didn't sleep much." She glanced at me through the mirror. "You going somewhere?" I shrugged. "Just out." The pause was longer than usual, but she didn't press. She never did. That was her strength. Never too obvious, never too controlling. She made distance look graceful. That day, I went nowhere. I sat in the car around the corner for an hour, just watching people walk their dogs and get on with their lives. I don't know why I did it. Maybe to feel like I was capable of detachment, of mystery, of being the one who disappears for once. I started journaling again, left the notebook casually on the nightstand. Blank pages at first. Then slowly, I filled them with vague lines. Half poems. Bits of thoughts that sounded like they could belong to someone unraveling or someone falling in love. Intentionally ambiguous. I made sure she saw it. I never said a word. A week passed. Then two. We didn't fight. We didn't talk much either. But things felt different. There was a new tension, a subtle shift in how she moved around me. She started studying me again, like I was a painting she used to know but couldn't quite place. She asked if I was working on a project. I told her it was confidential. She laughed a little at that, but there was a flicker of something else behind her eyes. Curiosity, insecurity, maybe even doubt. And that flicker felt like oxygen to me. Then, one night, I came home late, after deliberately walking around the city alone for hours, and found her sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open, dinner untouched. She didn't look up right away. When she did, her voice was flat. "Cashin invited me to lunch next week." I sat down across from her. "You gonna go?" She watched me, waiting for a reaction that never came. "I haven't decided," she said eventually. I nodded. "Let me know if you do. I'll be out that day anyway." She frowned. "You've been out a lot lately." I smiled. "So have you." And then, for a moment, we just stared at each other, like strangers who somehow remembered each other's faces from a dream. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it was charged, heavy with things unsaid. She didn't bring it up again, but I knew then that something had cracked. Not a break. Not yet. But a hairline fracture in the glass, the kind that spreads slowly until one day the whole thing shatters. And I wasn't sure anymore if I was trying to fix us or destroy us beautifully. It happened on a Wednesday. I was sitting on the floor of my office, surrounded by open boxes. Not dramatic ones filled with evidence or love letters or anything cinematic like that. Just old tech. Dusty routers, tangled cables, 2 broken mice, and a cracked photo frame I hadn't seen in years. The picture inside was from our first trip to Vermont. Snow in our hair, flushed cheeks. Avelin holding a paper cup of cider while I squinted into the wind. We were so badly dressed, both of us. No filters, no expensive coats, no perfect posture. Just us. I stared at that photo for a long time, wondering when exactly we became something else. Something more polished and more hollow. Somewhere along the line, we'd stopped being messy, and in the process, we'd stopped being close. I felt like a supporting actor in the high-production version of her life now. My lines were shorter. My scenes were fewer. I wasn't being edited out, not exactly. I was just being flattened. So I took the frame, cleaned off the dust with my sleeve, and placed it on her side of the dresser without saying anything. It was a stupid gesture, small and probably passive-aggressive, but part of me needed to remind her, and maybe myself, that there had been a version of us worth missing. That night, I caught her staring at it. She didn't say a word about it, but she moved it slightly. Not away, just repositioned it. Like it didn't belong, but was too personal to throw out. The way you treat a gift from someone you used to love, but can't stand anymore. Later that evening, she went out for a walk. No details, no time estimate. Just grabbed her coat, keys, and left. I didn't follow. I didn't text. I just sat in the living room with the lights off, letting the blue glow of the TV flicker over furniture we never used together anymore. When she came back, her hair was messy. Wind, maybe. She smelled like her favorite rooftop bar downtown, citrus and cigars, and would smoke. She didn't say where she'd been, and I didn't ask. But the next morning, something shifted. She started watching me again. Not in the way she used to when she was in love, but the way people look at something they can't quite identify. She'd come into the office under the pretense of looking for a pen and glance at my computer screen longer than necessary. She asked if I'd been talking to anyone new. I told her I had clients. Technically true. She asked if I was writing again. I said I never stopped. Also true. She started complimenting me in strange ways. You look like you've lost weight, even though I hadn't. You're dressing better lately, though it was the same clothes, just ironed. You seem more confident. I wasn't. I was falling apart. Quietly, neatly, strategically, but it was working. And then came the email. It arrived late at night, while she was asleep. Subject line, "We've noticed your activity." It was from Cashin, not to her, to me. My old work email, one I hadn't checked in months. Apparently, he'd found my portfolio online. He wanted to connect. Asked if I was open to some freelance consulting for a product launch. I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure whether this was some kind of twisted joke or a genuine offer. He had no idea who I was. No clue I was her husband. No idea I'd watched him sit in my seat and drink my whiskey and smile like he owned everything I'd ever loved. And now he wanted my help. I should have said no. I should have deleted the email, blocked the address, and told Avelin everything. But I didn't. I replied, "Happy to chat. Let's schedule something." And as I hit send, I felt it for the first time in months. Not anger. Not pain. Control. Cashin scheduled the call for Friday, noon sharp. I accepted, told him I was in between projects, and made it sound like I was squeezing him in. I used phrases I'd only ever heard from Avelin's mouth: brand voice mismatch, market recalibration, audience friction. I didn't even fully understand what they meant, but I knew how to say them. And he ate it up. His face appeared in the Zoom window, tan and annoyingly symmetrical, framed by a faux bookshelf background that probably came with the premium version of his video platform. He greeted me with that same casual smugness he wore at the party, but this time it had a different flavor. He was trying to impress me. He had no idea who I was. He thought I was some rising consultant, a low-key creative with sharp instincts and a low ego. "We're looking for quiet brilliance," he said, as if quoting himself from a TED Talk he hadn't been invited to give yet. I kept my voice calm, my answers vague, my tone modest, and I watched as he leaned forward, taking notes like a student trying to impress the professor. I smiled through the whole call. When we wrapped, he said, "This might sound weird, but you remind me of someone. Can't put my finger on it." I shrugged. Maybe I just have one of those faces. He nodded, then chuckled. "Yeah, or one of those energies." After I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the black screen for a long time. One of those energies. Whatever that meant. My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, or throw something, or call Avelin into the room and demand she explain how this man had wormed his way into our lives like a virus dressed in linen. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about confrontation anymore. It was about control. That night, I cooked dinner. Real dinner. Not frozen ravioli or cereal out of the box like the past few weeks. I made roasted lemon chicken with wild rice and grilled asparagus. Set the table. Lit 2 candles. Put on music that I knew would hit her right in the nostalgia. The same playlist we used when we moved into our first apartment. The one she played when she danced barefoot in the kitchen while unpacking mugs. She came home late, surprised. Guarded. "What's all this?" she asked, taking off her coat. I shrugged. Felt like cooking. She sat down slowly, as if unsure whether this was peace or bait. We ate in near silence, but the kind that buzzes with subtext. I asked about her week, her team, even her dumb manager whose name I always forget on purpose. She seemed confused by the effort, but softened by it too. Midway through the second glass of wine, she asked what I'd been working on lately. I paused just long enough to make it feel significant. A startup reached out. Branding issue. Some guy named Cashin. Her fork froze on the way to her mouth. Just for a second. I acted like I didn't notice. Said he'd seen my portfolio through a referral. I added casually. Funny guy? Smart. A little intense. Avelin put her glass down a little too hard. You're consulting for him? Just one project. Not sure I'll take it. Seems like a lot of ego wrapped in a pitch deck. Her lips twitched, almost a smile, almost a warning. Don't get sucked into his orbit, she said, looking at her plate. People like that, they burn through everyone eventually. I tilted my head. You speak from experience? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for her wine again. And this time, she drank the whole glass in one long, deliberate pull. That night, she came to bed early, slid under the covers closer to me than usual. I pretended to be asleep, but I could feel the tension in her back, the cold in her fingertips. I wondered if she was thinking about him, or me, or the slow, quiet collision between the two. I didn't touch her, didn't speak, just stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathing shift as she drifted off, unaware that the man she was now curled against was already dismantling everything she thought she'd hidden. Not to hurt her, not yet, but to show her I was no longer the man who waited to be chosen. There's a peculiar kind of silence that fills a house when two people are pretending not to watch each other. It's not loud like fighting. It's not peaceful like healing. It's something in between, a restrained chaos. That's what our home became over the next few days. Not a battlefield, a chessboard. Avelin started dressing differently. Not sexy, just sharper. Subtle changes. Earrings she hadn't worn in years. Heels on a Tuesday. Lipstick even on days she didn't go into the office. She started leaving her phone face down, clearing her browser history, logging out of email on the shared iPad, which she hadn't touched in months until she suddenly had something to hide from herself. She also began asking questions. Innocent ones. What do you think about emotional boundaries in consulting? How do you know when someone's manipulating you professionally? Do you believe men and women can work closely without things getting weird? I answered with what she expected, measured, vague, harmless. But I always watched her reaction closely. The way her fingers curled, the twitch in her jaw, the quiet assessments playing out behind her eyes. She wasn't asking about me. She was asking about him. And then came the invitation. Cashin emailed again, this time not for feedback. He wanted me to attend an in-person pitch session. His office. Friday morning. His core branding team would be there. I could shadow the process, he wrote, give live commentary, and help frame the presentation for investors. He even offered to send a car, like I was royalty, or a weapon he didn't know he was handing to the enemy. I didn't reply immediately. I waited until Avelin came home that night, heels clicking across the hardwood, her perfume arriving seconds before she did. She poured herself wine without asking if I wanted any and sat across from me like it was a habit, not a marriage. I got invited to sit in on a creative pitch, I said casually. She glanced up. Oh, Cashin's team, I added. She blinked slowly. He's bringing you in-house. Just for one session. Branding calibration. Her fingers tightened around the glass. You're actually going? I shrugged. Why not? He seems to respect my work. She didn't speak for a moment, and then, he doesn't respect anyone. He just consumes people. I looked at her carefully. And you? She met my gaze. I tolerated him. That's different. It was a lie. Not in the obvious way. It was too controlled, too curated to be the full truth. She'd been more than just tolerant. I had seen the way her body turned toward him at that rooftop party. The way her laugh cracked wider when he spoke. The way she let him sit in my seat without hesitation. So I said nothing else. I just stood up, rinsed my plate, and left her in the silence she'd helped build. Friday came. The car arrived. A sleek black sedan with leather seats that smelled like someone else's money. The driver barely spoke. The office was everything I expected. Glass walls, standing desks, fake plants, and a fridge full of kombucha and no one actually drank. Cashin greeted me like we were old friends. Avelin wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. She wouldn't be stupid enough to let the overlap show. Or maybe she just didn't want to see how easily I'd slipped into this other version of myself. The meeting went well. Or badly. I honestly didn't care. I gave notes. People nodded. Someone asked if I'd consider joining full-time. I laughed it off. As I was leaving, Cashin walked me to the elevator. Hey, just between us, he said, his voice low. What made you say yes? Honestly. I looked him dead in the eye. Curiosity. He grinned. That's dangerous. I held the smile just long enough. Only if you're afraid of what you'll find. He laughed, clapped me on the back, and walked away. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the chrome doors. Suit fitted. Eyes sharp. Hair just messy enough to seem effortless. I looked like the version of me Avelin had forgotten existed. Maybe one I'd forgotten, too. When I got home, she was in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, her back to me. Her voice was low, too low. I couldn't hear the words. Just the tone, serious, quiet, defensive. When she saw me, she ended the call faster than necessary. Good meeting? She asked, avoiding my eyes. Enlightening, I said. That night, she kissed me before bed for the first time in weeks. But it felt strategic, like a peace offering, or a delay tactic. And somewhere deep in my gut, I realized something. This wasn't about Cashin anymore. It hadn't been for a while. This was about the version of me she thought had died. And the fact that he was finally back, smiling, silent, and dangerous. 3 days passed. I didn't ask about the phone call I overheard. She didn't bring it up either. That's how we operated now. Truth didn't live here anymore. Just carefully folded half-lies and selective silences we both pretended were peace. But something had changed in her. I could feel it in the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking. A longer pause when I passed by. A second glance at my phone. She didn't trust me anymore, and not because I'd done anything wrong, but because she could feel something she used to control now slipping right through her fingers. She started initiating things. Small things. Casual touches. A comment about my cologne. A new brand of coffee she knew I liked. I responded in kind, politely, warmly, without letting it mean anything. And that, more than anything, rattled her. Avelin had always been the anchor in the relationship, the one who knew what we needed before I did. The one who planned, adjusted, calculated. I was the driftwood, and now that I had found direction without her steering, she didn't know where to place me. Then came the dinner. Out of nowhere, she suggested we go out. An actual reservation. Italian place we hadn't been to in over a year. The one where they remembered our usual order and used to bring us free dessert just because we reminded the owner of his niece and her shy boyfriend. I agreed. I let her pick my shirt. I let her feel in control of the night again. Let her lead the conversation, laugh at my jokes like she meant it, sip her wine, and lean in just enough to seem present. But I also let just enough mystery hang between my words to make sure the questions she didn't ask would still linger. Halfway through the meal, her phone buzzed on the table. She turned it face down without checking the screen. I didn't react. That silence did more damage than any accusation could have. You seem different lately, she said eventually, spinning her wine glass by the stem. Like, you're somewhere else. I've been thinking a lot, I said, about who I used to be. She went still for a moment, then forced a smile. And how much I gave up trying to be the version you wanted. The smile froze. Her fork lowered. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. We drove home in silence. That same sharp, electric quiet. The kind that buzzes in your chest, but never reaches your ears. Later that night, I saw her phone light up again. A single name. Cashin. No message preview. Just the name. Still saved as C. Still pretending. I didn't check the message. I didn't need to. Instead, I went to my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the shared calendar she didn't know I still had access to. Her Thursday afternoon had a mysterious, internal sync blocked out for 2 hours. No location. No meeting link. Just an empty bubble, parked at 2 p.m. I checked my email. Cashin had invited me to an investor prep session the same day. Same time. Different building. He had no idea. Neither did she. And that's when it hit me, for the first time, truly and completely. They weren't the powerful ones in this story. They were walking toward each other on a burning bridge. And I was the one holding the match. Thursday came like a countdown. Every hour felt louder than the last. She dressed differently that morning, deliberate, but not obvious. Not seductive. Strategic. The kind of outfit meant to look like she wasn't trying, while still asking for attention. I didn't comment. Just kissed her on the cheek like I used to. She stiffened for a moment, then smiled like it hurt. When she left, I didn't follow. I didn't check the calendar again. I didn't track her location. I didn't call the driver or call Cashin or set anything into motion. Because by then, I understood something I hadn't before. If you need to force someone to stay, they're already gone. But if they choose to come back after you've let go, that's power. That's peace. I spent the afternoon not thinking about them. Not waiting for proof. Not building up scenarios in my head. I walked. I sat in the park. I bought a bagel from the stand near the bookstore we used to go to. I watched an older couple bicker over crossword puzzles and thought, there's still time to be that someday. Even if it's not with her. She got home after sunset. Quiet. No dramatic entrance. No perfume trail. No cloud of guilt trailing behind her. She put her keys down, slipped off her shoes, and stood in the hallway like she wasn't sure whether she still lived here. I didn't go to the meeting, she said softly. I looked up from the couch, waiting. I went to the river instead. Sat there for an hour. She laughed lightly, but her voice cracked. Didn't even bring headphones. I nodded once. Did he call? He did. Twice. I didn't answer. She stepped into the living room, carefully, like the floor might collapse under her. I just sat there, trying to remember what it felt like when I didn't have to lie about anything. And I realized I couldn't even picture your face from that first year anymore. I didn't speak. She looked down. I messed everything up, Rowan. I know that. But I don't want to be another story you have to carry around like a scar. You're not a scar, I said. You're a chapter. One I'm still in. But I won't stay in it alone. Her eyes welled up, and she looked away quickly. What do I do now? I stood, slowly, and walked over to her. For the first time in months, I touched her like I meant it. Gently, just enough to let her know I saw her again. You start over, I said. But this time, you meet me where I am. Not where you left me. We didn't talk much more that night. There wasn't anything left to say. No dramatic apologies. No theatrical tears. Just two people sitting next to each other again, finally facing the same direction. Over the next few weeks, we rebuilt. Not everything. Some things stayed broken. But the important pieces were there. We went to therapy. We deleted names. We set boundaries. We laughed again, for real this time. Not to prove anything. Just because it felt good. And one quiet Sunday, sitting on a blanket in the park with bagels between us and the crossword in her hand, she whispered without looking up, I like this version of you. And I smiled, because I did too.